Hey guys, today I'm going to be reviewing Season 2 of The Empress. So, before I head into my thoughts and feelings on Season 2 of The Empress, there will most likely be some, I guess, spoilers in this particular video, but once again, this is based on history, real historical events, real historical people, and I don't really consider, things like that to be spoilers, alas. But either way, if you have not seen season 1 of this show and you've not caught up and seen season 2 and you just don't really want to know anything what is covered in this particular season, come back at a later point. So yes, my thoughts and feelings on The Empress season 2, you guys. Let me just start here. For starters, this season just kind of came out of nowhere, and I'm not going to complain about that because for the longest time I hadn't heard any news or updates if this show was getting renewed, if it was coming back, and if it was, when. So yeah, when I first saw one of the trailers for season 2, I was like, oh my god, it's coming back. Netflix is actually bringing something back, because we know how Netflix is. They're notorious for just canceling random things, and a lot of times you don't even know something is canceled until like months and months after the fact, and you're just kind of thinking to yourself, oh, has my favorite show been canceled? So, yeah, a pleasant surprise that The Empress did return, even though Netflix was just really sneaky and quiet about it, I feel like. So yeah, I'm very, very happy this show came back, and hopefully we get more seasons, you guys, because yeah, Empress Elizabeth of Austria-Hungary, her relationship with Franz Joseph, there's just so much juicy, good stuff to cover, and I really hope this show gets picked up for another couple seasons so we can cover as much territory as possible in the very dramatic lives of these people. So let's start here with what was going on in this particular season. Again, on Netflix, this time we had 6 episodes. I can swear season 1 had 8 episodes, but I might be mistaken about that. But either way, we only had 6 episodes this season, which is like blasphemous. I needed more. And what we were covering this season, what I wrote down here in my notes really quickly, Elizabeth and Franz, they are married now, because that's pretty much how last season ended. They were married for a couple episodes, and then we had like some really dramatic things happen right near the end. And it opens, and I think it's been about 2 years. That was kind of the impression I was getting, that it's been about 2 years between seasons. And yeah, their youngest daughter, Sophie, has already been born, and Elizabeth is currently awaiting the birth of their second child, who they are both desperately hoping is the male heir that they need for their empire. And as far as the political things going on this show, there is definitely a lot of discontent, we shall say, growing in the empire, especially in places like Lombardy and whatnot. And yeah, there's like whole factions of people out there ready to tear down the Austria-Hungary empire, bring it down to its knees, if you will. And you guys, I seriously do not have a thing to complain about with this particular season. I thoroughly enjoyed every single episode. I, I, I really don't think there was like a slow episode in the batch whatsoever. I really feel like each episode had a really nice pace to it. Everything was moving along. It was covering the things that needed to be covered in this particular season, especially exploring the types of particular themes that it was exploring, because a lot of the season had to do with Elizabeth now as a married woman and with children, and yeah, all this pressure to produce a male heir, and yeah, her continuing dynamics with her husband Franz Joseph, and yeah, the insane intensity and that rivalry between her and her mother-in-law, if you will. So yeah, a lot of the seasons is having to do with Elizabeth's inner private struggles, trying to cope with motherhood and being a wife, but also just being a woman in general. Trying to find her place and the things that she wants to do, and yeah, wanting to be a good empress for the Austrian-Hungary Empire. You know, that's all she desires more than anything is to be an ear and to go to people and listen to their issues and complaints and make things better. And yes, is it a bit naive of her? Because she's not going to be able to fix everything. You know, it is kind of naive of her. She's not going to be able to fix everything. There's always going to be somebody unhappy no matter what she does. And yeah, Franz Joseph and her mother-in-law definitely kind of, it riles them up. You know, Franz Joseph especially, he is the man. He is the emperor. His voice is the end-all be-all. You know, and sometimes he gets a little, like, woman, you need to go through me, you know. And then, yeah, her mother-in-law, Sophie, yeah, she has been in charge and controlling of this family for decades, and she doesn't like another woman coming in and usurping her place, essentially, especially when she feels like her opinions are the only opinions that matter, and she sees Elizabeth still as kind of this ignorant, naive girl that doesn't know much of anything about how their empire is run. But yeah, like I said, I just absolutely thoroughly enjoyed every episode of this season. Nothing to honestly complain about. As always, the show looks great. Visually, it is stunning to look at. I really love the performances. I love that the show is completely in German. To be quite honest, that's kind of just refreshing for a historical period piece. I love that it's all in German because it's just much better to listen to. It really kind of puts you in there, immerses you into that atmosphere, I think. Now, yeah, the costuming. I still have my issues with the costuming for this show because they're still trying to appeal to a modern audience. And so some of the costuming, especially the women, because I feel like this is always the case with men's clothing in historical fiction like this. The men's clothing, for the most part, is usually pretty accurate. But yeah, the women, it's like the women, they want to show off as much as they can and be really fancy and showy and flowery, you know. And yeah, some of the costuming on the show, especially on the women, it's definitely not very historically accurate. It's nice to look at, but yeah, it's like in the back of your head, you're like, there's something about this that's not working. So yeah, I still have my issues with the costuming, even though it's still nice to look at. It looks great on these people, but still, you know, looking at old photos, it's like, no, they're not wearing anything like that. Like I said, a lot of the big thematic things and plot points being covered in this season, I already kind of established the big things going on with Empress Elizabeth, you know, her struggling with motherhood, wifehood, just being a woman. So there's all of that going on with her, but this season is definitely much more heavily focused on the political atmosphere, way more than season 1 was, because season 1 was definitely much more focused on the romantic sexual tension, you know, between our two leads and whatnot. It was much more about that. So I particularly really liked that this season there was a lot more heavy focus on the politics and yeah, people sitting around and discussing things. I'm a sucker for that sort of thing. People just sitting around tables and talking strategy and politics and people getting yelled at or people yelling at other people. You know, I love that sort of drama around a table. So yeah, this season you got a lot more of council meetings going on. There's also the introduction of Napoleon III, which I don't think he was introduced at all last season, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think he popped up last season, so I believe this is the first time we're seeing Napoleon III. So I really liked all of that going on, how he was used throughout the season. I liked how they would use him as like this big cliffhanger for any given episode. I swear there was quite a number of episodes where he would end the episode with some sort of dramatic speech, some sort of dramatic threat. I loved it. And then on top of that, we do see the return of Franz's brother, Maximilian. And he spends pretty much the entire season over in Milan. And as we know, last season ended rather tumultuously between Franz and his brother, because there was that almost coup that happened between the brothers, and Maximilian really thinking he should be the one in charge, you know, and he thinks he has all his great ideas, you know. Plus, there was kind of that back and forth between him and Elizabeth, wasn't there? Kind of this potential, like, he wanted to try and take her away from his brother. That's kind of how I read it at times. So yeah, Maximilian, he spends a lot of this season. I liked his character growth and development this season as well, because I really feel like he went from like a boy to a man finally, and he spends a lot of time. His biggest desire, he just wants to be seen as a good son and brother, and he wants to be put to some sort of use. He doesn't want to just be sitting around. I mean, for crying out loud, he almost kills himself in the very first episode of this season. He's sitting there on the the wall, and he's sitting there looking out over the ocean, about to throw himself down into the ocean to kill himself. So he's in a pretty rough place in the first couple episodes. He's kind of suicidal. He's a little bit drunk. Well, he's not a little bit drunk. He is drunk. But yeah, a lot of things change for him once he meets his future wife, if you will. And things turn around, and he really kind of grows and matures from there. And again, he just wants to be a good brother and a son, and he wants to be put to some sort of use and some sort of function. And he still wants to be heard. You know, he wants to be heard. But Franz Joseph, he's not really kind of having any of it, especially just some of the events that play out in this particular season. I think Franz really kind of shuts himself off on occasion rather than opening himself up. So just a really quick rundown of the cast really quickly, some of the plot points and things that maybe I'm kind of missing. Yeah, we have Devrim Lingnow playing Empress Elizabeth. I just continue to be so impressed with her performance. I feel like she looks like a young Empress Elizabeth. You know, they do a good job, like especially with her hair, because Elizabeth was notorious for all that long, lengthy, heavy hair, and we finally get to see a lot more of that with her hair, all that hair this season. But yeah, I love Devon Lingnow. She just has such a powerful, nuanced performance, I feel like, and she knows kind of when to have those quiet moments, but then also those moments like, hey, listen to me. And this season in particular definitely was playing around with her mental health, because the real historic Empress Elizabeth definitely was known for her rather eccentric behavior, and yeah, she had some severe mental health issues too, which back then, you know, in the 1800s, that would have been seen as massively taboo and nobody talked about it. And so she had no one to really go to talk about things like that when she was feeling down and depressed. And so she turned into a rather eccentric figure, just kind of taking off and running away and doing her own damn thing half the time. So yeah, we're kind of starting to see the start of that definitely in this season with Elizabeth, with her mental health kind of slowly degrading over time. And oh my god, I guess that was a case of gaslighting. Would that be a case of gaslighting when her mother-in-law, you know, Elizabeth had just come out of that really traumatic birth, and she's a mess. She's ill, and she goes out with her little daughter. She goes out with her daughter, and she kind of has that vision of that one guy that got killed in the palace at one point, and she kind of passes out, I think, and she leaves her daughter abandoned for a little bit. But everyone thinks that she's a terrible mother after she abandons her daughter in that split second, you know, and then her mother-in-law sits and wants to like put her on some sort of medication, something to sedate her, you know, and yeah, like I said, a case of gaslighting, I feel like, when her mother-in-law was like, Franz doesn't have to know what happened. Here, if you just take this medication so we can sedate you, if you take this, I won't tell him what happened. Well, he doesn't have to know, you know. Oh my god, I was like, I can't believe this. I can't believe this woman. And yeah, because Elizabeth, she's just in such a vulnerable, weak place at that moment. She's like, okay, fine, sedate me. I'll take whatever you want me to take, but just don't tell Franz Joseph what happened in that. I kind of lost track of her daughter for a couple seconds. Oh my god. And yeah, seriously, Devon Lignow's performance in that moment, Jesus, I loved it. And we have Philip Frisant. I think I'm butchering the pronunciation of his name. Philip Frisant, playing Franz Joseph. Oh my god, I love looking at him. He's such a gorgeous looking man. I love the chemistry between him and Devon Lingnow. They just work and balance each other out so wonderfully. Yeah, Franz is definitely going through the ringer this season. He loves his wife more than anything, but he also doesn't want her to kind of usurp his place to some degree, you know. It's very much there was a lot going on this season where I kind of kept thinking about that relationship, you know, back in like the early 90s between like Prince Charles and Princess Diana. You know, how she kind of outshone him. Princess Diana often outshone Prince Charles and everything, and I feel like there's something kind of similar going on this season, that Franz is sometimes being outshone by his wife on occasion, and he kind of doesn't really like that, you know. And a big thing with Franz this season too, he just wants to avoid war at all costs, but he also doesn't want to be seen as weak or a fool. But that's kind of the thing. All these other neighboring big powers around the empire, or even within the empire, all these other big names, that's kind of their intent. They want Franz to look like an idiot. They want him to look like a fool. They want him to be vulnerable. They want him to look weak. Um, they want war. They essentially want war, but none of them want to start the war. They want him to start the war. They want the Austrian-Hungarian Empire to start the war. So that's a big point this season as well. Franz being really kind of in this tight place that he needs to do what's best for his country, but at the same time he doesn't want to look weak or insecure, but he don't want to have a bunch of people die on his watch, you know. So yeah, it's like, what does he do, you know? And we see that dramatic conclusion to this season where he does kind of make that decision ultimately. Yeah, we're going to war with, you know, whoever. There's a lot going on this season, you guys. We're going to war, and I didn't want to do this, but this kind of the thing that I'm stuck in now. This is the predicament I'm stuck in, and I've made the decision now. And yeah, hey, he's going off to war. He's going to go fight. He's going to go lead his men. He's not going to just sit back in his palace and just order things around. He is physically going out there. And yeah, that comes back to haunt his mother there at the end. Speaking of which, Sophie, played by Malika Fortain. Yeah, Sophie, oh God, she's such a wonderful antagonist to this show. I wouldn't call her a villain so much. I don't think she's a villain, but she's definitely an antagonist and a foil to her own son and to her daughter-in-law. Yeah, her really feeling, like I said earlier, she has been in control of this family for decades and kind of running things and being that voice that whispers certain things. And a lot of people go to her. A lot of people go to her for support and for ideas and strategy. And yeah, even though she's a woman during this time period, she still has a lot of power to give. And there are people who are rightfully very afraid of her. And once again, like I said, a lot of things kind of come back to haunt her, because at the very end when Franz is like, hey, he's declaring, I'm going out there, I'm going to war, I'm not going to stand back here in my palaces. That's kind of the last thing Sophie wanted. She did not want her son to go out and do that. She wanted him to stay back behind the scenes and let all of his, you know, commanders and generals or whoever do what they need to do. So yeah, we do definitely see Sophie at a very weak, vulnerable place, literally right there in the closing minutes of the episode, where she's finally at a loss. She's at a loss, she's speechless, and she's vulnerable, and she's in tears. You know, we've never seen her in tears on this show. She's always really stoic and hard and cold, and she always talks to Elizabeth, you know, like, she hates when Elizabeth is weak. You know, she hates when Elizabeth is crying or she's weak and vulnerable. She thinks all that is a weakness. You know, emotion is a weakness. So here she is finally displaying emotion. I think there's something satisfactory about that to Elizabeth. You know, like, finally this cold-hearted woman, I'm seeing some emotion from her. And but yet she always goes on about me having emotion and showing my vulnerabilities. You know, so I like that they finally kind of came together right there at the end within their personal emotional states and whatnot. Okay, moving over to Maximilian, played by Johannes Nussbaum. I loved Maximilian's story this season. I was really curious how much screen time he would even get this season, because he, like I said, he's pretty much over in Milan the entire season, and he doesn't really have any sort of interaction with the main cast except for a couple random times. But yeah, I'm glad and pleasantly surprised Maximilian had as much screen time as he did this season, and how he was kind of used in various different ways. And once again, he had a lot to do with what was going on with, like, Napoleon III and whatnot. I loved his little romance there with Charlotte of Belgium and how that got going. They just perfectly balance each other out, you guys. I loved it. And yeah, they finally get married there about halfway through the season, I think. So yay. But boy oh boy, his Playboy days are coming back to haunt him, because it may seem like he can't have children. Because at first they were wondering if Charlotte was the one who couldn't have children, but it seems like probably he is the one who can't have children because of all the, you know, the sexual related diseases that he's probably accrued over the past years from, like I said, his Playboy days. And then moving into some of these other random side plots, you guys, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I really enjoyed the rather tragic love story that was going on between Alexander von Bach and Countess Leontine von Apoffy. I had to look at my notes because these people have some names and I gotta look at them or else I can't pronounce them. But yeah, Alexander and Leontine, I can't believe I really enjoyed their bizarre, crazy romance this season, because I think last season last season there were a lot of random subplots and side characters I just didn't really care for. But this season, I think this season did a much better job of incorporating the side plots and the side characters and making everybody much more interesting, you know. And yeah, Alexander and Leontine were definitely two characters that I vastly, hugely warmed up to this season, and I love their love story and the direction it went. And are they going to reunite? You guys, I need them to reunite next season. I don't know how that's going to happen, but I need it. And then we have Margaret, who is like Sophie's, I guess, lady in waiting, I guess is the correct terminology there for her. Margaret's downward spiral throughout the season, because after that one doctor comes in and he gives that sedation drug to Elizabeth, he also gives some to Margaret because she requests some, because she's so stressed out being in the employ of Sophie. So the whole season, Margaret is sitting there taking that sedation drug as well the whole damn season. I really thought that was going to go somewhere with her taking that drug. I thought she was going to overdose at some point. I really did. I thought the season was going to end and she was going to either overdose or she was going to be dead. I just kept waiting for something terrible to happen to her. Let me tell you, you guys, I really love seeing more of little Ludwig, which is like the youngest brother of Franz and Maximilian. Ludwig barely played a role last season. He kind of would pop up here and there. There he would be. This season, they made a bigger effort with incorporating Ludwig. Like, he had a whole episode, pretty much. There was a whole episode where he was in it very prominently, and yeah, him kind of realizing that he likes other boys, you know, boys the same age and whatnot. He's kind of really kind of growing into that and realizing his preferences. And yeah, oh Lord, that was terrible though. The conversion therapy, I guess, is what you would call I don't know what they would have called it back then in the 1800s, but yeah, the conversion therapy, where yeah, Sophie realizes Ludwig has feelings for that other little boy, and yes, she wants to put a stop on that immediately. Oh my god, and oh, that whole sequence with him and the priest was just so terrible, you guys. But yeah, I love that little Ludwig had much more screen time this season, because he's the most precious thing. He needs to be protected at all costs, you guys. Oh my god. And yeah, he can't be himself. That's all he wants. He just wants to be himself, but he can't. I also like seeing a lot more of the cabinet members. I can't tell you any of their names because they all have crazy names that I can't pronounce. I can't even spell them, let alone I have to actually look at them. But yeah, I love seeing all the cabinet members, and how, you know, the people who were with like either Franz or with Sophie, or just had complete different ideas of their own, you know, everybody having their power struggles, you know. And yeah, especially that one guy near the end after their daughter had died, and Franz is just in a really vulnerable place, and he's just drinking and all over the place, and that one guy comes in and he's there basically saying, hey, I hate when people are taking advantage of you, but he's trying to take advantage of him in his moment of weakness. But yeah, I really like seeing a lot more of the cabinet members. Yeah, we get to see the return of Elizabeth's Bavarian family. We have a whole episode where after the death of her daughter, she goes and spends time with her mother and her brothers and sisters. And yeah, she's just walking around the woods the entire time and looking for her dad. I think that was a really pivotal episode too, when Elizabeth did go back to see her family in Bavaria, and all those conversations she was having with her mother, because it's like she needed to hear the things that her mother was saying to her, because yeah, her daughter had just died and she just felt useless and hopeless, and what's the point of living, and she felt like she had been a terrible mother, and yet her mother being there to tell her, hey, children die all the time, you gotta move, you gotta carry on, you know, you gotta put yourself together, carry on. And yeah, Elizabeth finally gets that by the end. You know, she finally moves on and carries on. And yeah, speaking of little Sophie, we do get the death of little Sophie this season. That was so terribly tragic and sad, you guys. I knew it was coming, because historically I knew that their youngest little girl like that, I knew that she was going to die, and yeah, through illness, and yeah, it was still so hard to watch. It was still so painful to watch, and yeah, I think it did make me cry. I think I did have some tears while watching that ending of that episode. But yeah, the death of little Sophie, woo, one of the big highlight episodes of this season. And yeah, we also get the birth of Gisela, much to Franz's disappointment, you guys. And Rudolph, is Rudolph born at the very end? I wrote that in my notes. I'm trying to remember. Was Rudolph there at the very end? I don't think, was he? Seriously, I'm having a mind blank. I literally watched this show a couple weeks ago prior to, you know, doing this video, so now I can't remember if little Rudolph had been born or not. Either way, if you know your history, you know the direction poor little Rudolph is going to go, and it's pretty bad. So you guys, that is it for my thoughts and feelings on season 2 of The Empress. I definitely really hope Netflix renews the show for a 3rd season. I would love to see a 3rd season. You can't just leave it with everybody going off to war with each other. No, do not do that to me. So yeah, Netflix, for the love of God, please give me a 3rd season. Yeah, overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this season. As I said, I have nothing to complain about. I honestly have nothing to complain about. Pretty, maybe not perfect. The show might not be totally perfect, but this is still the type of period drama that I love and prefer, you know? But yeah, I'm definitely curious, you guys. In the comments below, did you guys enjoy season 2 of The Empress? Are you hoping for a 3rd season? Let me know. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye, guys.